today, and I guess I know where it's coming from and I know why, but it caught me a little off guard at the same time too. So I do appreciate those of you that are either going to tune in live or watch this on playback, but I've also kind of come to the mindset that, this red pill, blue pill dynamic, those are, it's an interesting conversation as it goes. Hey, Sarah. I definitely don't want anybody to be blue pilled, but I'm kind of over people being red pilled, in that I don't think it's really getting us anywhere. I'll give you a really good example of what I'm talking about, right? So there's a well-known, at least regionally, and I guess he's pretty well-known across the U.S. He's a former bounty hunter here in Minnesota, and he's also a former rapper from here in Minnesota. Went by Focus, and I've been paying attention to him for some time, and I really had a lot of hope in what I saw from him. But what I'm seeing in him over the last year and a half especially, is this constant lip service to the ideology or the ideal that he's out there fighting against the regime, fighting against the deep state. And even yesterday he posted something on Twitter, and he probably put it on his Facebook if he still has that as well, about how it's all about fighting against the tyranny. It's about standing up to the deep state, about taking down the deep state and taking down the regime. And yet all I see from him is what I saw today, which was the posting of a video that's several years old of a sales clerk in a department store being assaulted by a person of another ethnicity. And this has been a constant refrain for many, many, many months with this individual. And the reason why this is important to me, the reason why I'm sick and tired of people who are supposedly red-pilled pointing out when people of a particular ethnicity are doing violence, especially to white people, it's somehow being awakened to the reality of the war that's taking on place. And what it is, one, it's exposing the wickedness of this individual's heart, and it's exposing the wickedness of the individuals who support him, and it's showing just how not awakened they are. Because what is happening is not a white versus black, or a black versus white, or a black versus Asian, or whatever, Korean or Chinese or Taiwanese, any of that. It's not Asian versus white, or Hispanic versus white, or Hispanic versus Asian. That's what they want, folks. That's what that's what the regime wants. The regime wants people who are awakened to be wrapped up in the ideology of there being a race war, of there being an ethnic struggle. And they really love when white people see themselves under assault and talk about crimes against white people by people in minority groups. They love that. They absolutely adore when people like Focus, I don't want to say his name, but y'all know who I'm talking about. They love it when people like him and people who support him get wrapped up in that ideology, because they're winning. You're not fighting against anything by pointing these things out. You're literally being used as a tool by the deep state because you're falling for the deep state's propaganda. The deep state wants white people to think that there is a war against whiteness. The deep state wants white people to be caught up in that. The deep state wants black up, that everybody hates them and that everybody's against them and holding them down, and that every white person is part of the problem. And then when white people respond to that by saying, well, look at this video here, you're literally doing what they want you to do. You're guilty of doing what they want you to do. And there's another aspect of what's got me blackpilled today is a conversation that I had with a person I respect deeply. And I mean that. I respect this individual deeply. And around an well, I wouldn't say an interaction, but a conclusion that this person arrived at based on not ethnicity or anything like that, but based on an appearance. A snap decision was formed about this person by this person I was having the conversation with, that this person is going to fall into X, Y, or Z camp, and therefore not worth the time. Now, we ended up having a great conversation with it, and I know that he won't be offended when I talk about this. But we're all guilty of that to some degree or another. My friend Sarah is watching. Sarah is very much Hispanic. If I remember, I don't know what happened. It said it was reconnecting. So my friend Sarah, if you're still watching, Sarah, if I remember correctly, her family immigrated years ago from Mexico. Should I say it there? Should I do it like white people like to do? My friend Sarah's family immigrated here from Mexico, but I shouldn't, based on the way people look, and I should not be friends with Sarah. I shouldn't be friends with my friend Walt, who is a member of the Minnesota House of Representatives. I shouldn't be friends with my friend Mikey Harlow because he's gay, or friends with my friend Josh because he's gay. And there's a perception there that people like me who aren't gay and are conservative can't be friends with other people because those people can't be conservative like I am. And as many of you know, I'm not your quintessential normie-con. I'm not that guy. I'm paleo-conservative, paleo-libertarian. And so I have watched while people on both the left and the right, and I hate that dynamic, in the sense of there are people on the left and there are people on the right, but many people don't even understand what makes them on the left or what makes them on the right. And people on the right who identify as Republican immediately assume that everybody who's a Democrat must automatically be a hardcore leftist, and Democrats look at people who are Republicans and must automatically assume that they're hardcore white supremacists, even if they're black or Asian or Hispanic. There's some form of white adjacent white supremacist, and we get so wrapped up in these dynamics, and a lot of it is based strictly off of appearances, right? So if a person has an unnatural hair color, blue or red, unnatural, but an unnatural form of red, then they are probably, or they have a certain amount of piercings, or they have gauges, or they have certain types of body hair. They must automatically be, I'm cutting them off. I'm not going to have any interaction with them because they're clearly not like me. And I'm tired of that. We have such narrow, pathetic perceptions that are completely subjective. And I'm not going to dismiss subjectivity. Like, we like who we like. And more often than not, the people that we like don't meet an objective standard. What we like in people is completely subjective. Like, what I like in one person, I may not like in another. And what I don't like in another person, I might be able to tolerate or even like in someone different. So subjectivity always plays a role. But the problem is that we form these snap decisions about people's philosophical bents and people's philosophical and worldview ideologies based on nothing more than just the appearance. Tell ourselves this person is X, Y, or Z because of this particular outward trait. And I don't want to be cliched and say, well, I don't judge a book by its cover, because, we've been told that for years. I mean, if a person walks up to you and they're dressed all in a certain garb, like say they're dressed like a person just because they don't meet a particular standard that I think they should meet to be a person who I might welcome into one of the circles or levels of conversation that I'm willing to have if I initiate. Anyway, as I was saying, oftentimes we make snap decisions based on nothing more than our perception of who a person is, based on nothing more than how they look. We don't bother to have a conversation with them. We don't bother to engage them in conversation. We just make a snap decision. We call it self-protection. We call it, instinct. We call it any number of things. But then we're cutting ourselves off from someone who could very well be a very strong ally in the fight for preserving our republic, in the case of the intent of my channel, right? And I think of the number of people who have come into my life since I started this channel. People who are wealthy, who are ethnically different than me, people who are alternative lifestyle compared to me. I have two friends who are in a lesbian relationship. They are deeply devoted to one another, and they are deeply devoted to preserving the republic. I have other friends who are very much gay, who are strong allies in this fight to preserve this republic, to rescue society, to step into a sociological morass and stand next to me, someone who they should have nothing in common with. But if just based on perception, we rejected those people, or they rejected me, where the hell would we be? So if I sound black-pilled, it's because I am. I am sick and freaking tired of the so-called conservative types, so-called traditionalist types, who have determined in their own minds that they know what a true conservative, what a true traditionalist, what a true republic-loving, liberty-minded individual must look like, must act like, must speak like. They've determined all of these things based off of nothing more than what they think is the proper way to look and the proper way to think based off of appearance. That's it. Do you know how weak and small-minded that is? Do you understand how childishly immature, not adult immaturity, which is bad enough. All of us deal with that every day. Every day. But the childishness of the immaturity of dismissing someone on nothing more than our perception of who they might be based on how they look. That says so much of, not about them, but about you, if that's you who makes that decision like that. That's not their weakness. That's a weakness for you. And worse, you're cutting yourself off from being educated by other people, even if they are diametrically opposed to you philosophically. I do this all the time. I constantly am inviting people who disagree with me onto my show. Constantly. All the time. With naysayers and hate watchers in the chat section of my videos. or over on Twitter or any other places where I am, and no one ever wants to come on and do that. They're hurting themselves and hurting me. So if you have what you believe is to be the superior ideological position, instead of cutting yourself off from having conversations with people that you've assumed, that you've immediately judged as being other than what you think they should be, which is on your side, based on nothing more than appearance, you're hurting that person. You are not only are you hurting yourself by failing to expand your horizons, by having a conversation with someone that you're convinced disagrees with you, you're also hurting them because you're cutting them off from getting an education that they most drastically need if they really do disagree with you ideologically or on your political philosophy. And the black pill doesn't stop there, folks. I've had numerous conversations as of late with people who aren't paying attention to anything that's taking place in our society. Anybody that I talk to right now, and not anybody, I'm over exaggerating, of course, painting with an incredibly broad brush, very wide strokes. There are so many people out there who have buried their head in the sand and have said, like I heard today from somebody else, that's never going to happen here. Well, where the hell have you been? Because we were talking, would you turn your neighbor in if they had a gun? Do you have guns? Well, what do I need a gun for? I'm not going to, what if they outlaw firearms and they tell you, look, if you know that your neighbor has a gun, you have a duty to turn your neighbor in if they don't voluntarily turn that in. Well, I wouldn't turn my neighbor in. What if they came and said, if we know that your neighbor has a gun and you don't turn him in, when we come to take your neighbor away, we're going to take you away too? I still wouldn't do it. What if they tell you they're going to take your neighbor and you have an opportunity to hide them, and so you hide your neighbor, and then they come to your door and say to you, we know you're hiding your neighbor, now's your chance, turn them over, or we're going to take you away along with your neighbor and put you in a camp. What would you do? Well, I would turn my neighbor in at that point because I don't want to go to jail or go to a camp or lose my life for my neighbor. That, my friends, is what's wrong with the average person in the state of Minnesota and across the United States. So many of you are so much freaking talk about how tough you are. So many of you are so much freaking talk about how you would stand up against the oppression. You wouldn't. And my channel views reflect that. And not that I'm amazing by any stretch of the imagination. That's not my point. But I have 24, I don't even remember, 2,339 subscribers or something like that. And a lot of my videos aren't getting any kind of views or responses because most of the time I'm saying things to people that piss them off and they don't like to be challenged. But if somebody like Focus, who posts his gobbledygook and his inflaming rhetoric and talks about the race war against white people, people will flock to him because it strokes their need for sensationalism. It strokes these feelings that they have. And yet they won't do anything different than be provoked by someone like that. They won't get beyond the shallowness of what they think they believe. And so few will actually take Lisa Hansen. She could have complied in Albert Lee. She could have just done the right thing according to the governor's executive orders. When Kelly Martinez, the former city attorney of Albert Lee, came for her, when J.D. Carlson, the chief of police of Albert Lee, came for Lisa, she could have just said, oh. Ultimately, what I'm trying to do is not even about me. It's about future generations. It's for my neighbors and my neighbors' kids and for my neighbors' kids' kids and their kids' kids, so that we can continue to stand. And one of the places that it hits home for me, a place that I'm so deeply black-pilled, is all these people who come screaming at me about, we're the law and order people, we're the people that back the blue have to be, because we need to be a nation of rules, we need to be a nation of laws. You're not back the blue anymore. You want to know the truth? 3 years ago when I launched my channel, you want to know the truth? A lot of people in blue who wore the different shades of blue, the brown blue and the blue and the black blue and all of that, a lot of these people came up to me and said, man, you're so brave. You're so bold. I wish I could say the things that you're saying. Thank you for saying that. Years, other kids during the COOF pandemic, and arrested her for taking pictures inside of the Capitol building on January 6th. Cops did that. You back the blue morons. Cops did that to a little old lady who's on your side, goddammit. Cops did that. Cops gunned down Ashley Babbitt. Cops beat another woman to death on January 6th. Cops did that. Cops gunned down Duncan Lemp. Cops gunned down Daniel Shaver. Cops in Minnesota gunned down Philando Castile for doing what they asked him to do, which was get his permit. Cops did that shit. You want to know all these people who told me I was so brave and so bold and so vocal for taking a stand and standing on my oath? All these people in black uniforms and brown uniforms and tan uniforms and blue uniforms with the flag on their shoulders and their oath that they took that was just like an oath. All those goddamn people, not one of them publicly spoke out in support of me. You want a black pill? Try that. But so many of you are so goddamn blind that what's happening up in Minneapolis or in St. Paul at the state capitol are these hardcore Gramscian Marxists who are pushing these radical agendas. And you've got a few people in the Republican Party who are standing up and pushing against it. A few. Not the majority, not most. A few are standing up there pushing against it, and they're pushing through all this gun control legislation, and they're pushing through this trans sanctuary stuff, and they're pushing through the new hate speech laws. They're pushing all of this through. Who do you think they're going to send to your house to investigate you? And the ones that'll stand up and say, no, I'm not going to execute that red flag notice. No, I'm not going to go and haul that person in for this hate speech crime. No, I'm not going to go out there and defend this woman who kidnaps her child, or this man who kidnaps his child and brings him to Minnesota to have this gender reassignment surgery against the will of the other parent. No, I'm going to arrest that person. I'm going to take him to the border so that this child can go back into the loving arms of the parent who doesn't want them maimed. They're all going to comply. Every single goddamn one of them that's still wearing the badge, that's still wearing that flag on their shoulder, that's still standing there and saying, oh no, I took an oath. They're all going to comply, because to them, the job is not the oath. The job is following fucking orders. That's a black pill, folks. And so many of you are like, nope, I got family and friends who are cops, and they won't. Every single one of them has cut me off. All of them. Many of them are not talking. None of them are talking to me anymore. Which makes me say to myself, maybe they were never my friends. We were coworkers. Maybe we were never family. We just share blood and genetic makeup. And I'm okay with that. I don't sound okay with it, but why I'm black-pilled is because here's what I know. So many of you who wear the label conservative, so many of you who wear the label liberty-minded, so many of you could consider yourself constitutional originalists or constitutional conservatives, do not recognize that everything that I've said in this video describes you. Everything that I have said in this video is an apt description of who you are. You will comply. You will not stand up. You will continue, as I've said so many times, to back the tools of your own oppression as long as you don't have to be made uncomfortable. I'm so sick and tired of hearing people talk about how impressed they are with the boldness of people like Lisa Hansen and the people who come up to me and go, I don't know if I could have ever done what you did, but I'm so glad that there's a voice like yours out there speaking for us. I don't want to be the only voice speaking. I don't want to speak for you. I want you to speak for yourself, because when I'm speaking for me. I'm not speaking for anyone else. Stop being cowards, you cowards. Stop clinging to your comfort and your security. Stop thinking that it's never going to happen to you, that it's never going to happen in the United States, because it's already happening here. It's already happening here, and you aren't willing to do a goddamn thing about it. Because if you rock the boat, if you fail to comply, you'll lose everything you have. And you're more interested in your comfort, in your peace, and your ease of mind than you are in doing what's the right thing for the republic that you live in. Someone that I was talking to recently said to me, very recently, I said, did you take the shot? Nope. I stood my ground. What do you mean you stood your ground? I didn't take the shot. Well, right, but you got lucky because all of those things got dropped before they started really pushing it and forcing it onto businesses to make sure that it happened. Well, yeah, I know. I said, so what would have happened if they told you take it or you're fired? I would have taken it. Right. Just like you would have turned people in. Just like you would have turned people in. Because sooner or later, they're going to find that line that you're not willing to cross, and they're going to push you up to it. Or they're going to push that line up to the tips of your toes until they've got you backed against the wall. And I've used this analogy so many times. They're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until they get you backed up against the wall. And the only place left for you to go is either down onto your knees to take a bullet to the back of your head or to come out swinging. And I am sick and tired. I'm sick and freaking tired of hearing people talk about how they'll come out swinging when they haven't swung yet. You won't swing because you're cowards and you love your comfort more than you love this republic. That's a fact. And you don't deserve this republic anymore. It's been a long time since any of you have deserved it, but the ones that are left fighting, we're the ones that deserve it. The rest of you who applaud us and talk about how wonderful it is that we're people like me are out there talking, you guys, you don't deserve it. You don't deserve it. Founding fathers said when they wrote the Constitution and they wrote the Bill of Rights, they said, those who would exchange liberty for a little bit of security deserve neither liberty nor security. And that's 98% of you. And the reason I know that is because most of you won't say a damn thing. And you all keep flying your blue line flags, and you all keep voting down an ideological line because you have to, because you're not left with any choices. You're cowards. And I don't care how many more subscriptions I lose, how many more people sit here and say, you're out of line. I don't do this for the money. And I don't do this for popularity. I do it because maybe, just maybe, if it takes me having to black pill day, one of you might get black pilled and wake up to the reality that both sides freaking hate us. They hate us. They absolutely despise us. And they want nothing more than for you to kowtow and bend to keep your comfort. And I'm done. I'm done giving a shit about most of you. Because outside of a few of you, most of you don't give a shit about me.